This is the attack on the Plains village. Psst, pretend my hand isn't here. So, it's been long. But, uh-oh. First off, I must say, pretend that, it's a nice and sunny day, even though it's not a bright and sunny day. I mean, it looks that way. The flag is waving, it had some nice new fabric put on it, actually, as a matter of fact. But anyway, the flag is waving. But the next day would probably be the end of this village. Or it was the end of this village. But anyway, we must go back to 6 o'clock. The village had been abandoned for a while, until few new a few new villagers decided to take control of the village and call it home. So last, this did happen. Farmers, carpenters, fletchers, clerics, and children had it all planned out. But there was a matter of life and death. So it was actually 6 a.m. at the time. A pillager named Hakai, some kind of pillager name, had okay. This pillager and I think 4 of his buddies had decided to try and smuggle a lot of the supplies from this village indeed. So, there's this one pillager. Is one of his buddies. He's the strongest one of all. He's confident, but then the Iron Golem heads up to him and he gets slammed. Then there's this other guy who's really tall and skinny and again gets slammed. Then there was this derpy guy. Then there was a really short guy. Actually had a lot of impact put onto the Iron Golem. But then a lot of the monsters started to team up. Alright. Let's get to the actual matter. Now it is 7 a.m. And these villagers weren't taking everything easily. You see, the villagers had decided to reinforce everything. They decided to put even more of these golems. This sure reinforced the whole village, but it got kind of crowded. And you see these pillagers were trying to organize their own empire. So, this other dude named, well, let's call him Aqua. Aqua was a very loyal person himself. Him and a few pillager bodyguards had gone again to smuggle a lot of the loot. But before they went, there's a few more people who came too. A lot of, you see, these were Vindicator class pillagers. These Vindicator class pillagers meant business. They teamed up doing combos with all of the crossbow pillagers. But most of them had to run for some reason. But Actually, the golem actually died, or almost died. So this made a nice little an advantage for for the little for this little empire. This was more of a heavy attack until people found something truly something that would send a chill down somebody's spine. You see, this is a blacksmith's house that was recently created by a villager. But you see, under this house is a set of tunnels leading all the way up. Oh, keep going up, buddy. The nearest exit was actually right here in this area. And this was actually right next to the village. And all these bushes made a nice advantage to hide and attack in. This is a villager child. Um, his name is Crimson. Crimson loved gardening. He was always outside planting and, you know, planting and watering and fertilizing plants and flowers. His favorites were roses. These were these were actually handed to him by the iron golems. Although these brutes cannot talk, there's always something dangerous about them that every villager child does not know about. But then something happened. There was a skeleton for some reason. Yes, a skeleton. But we're not talking about these, but not the regular ones. These guys were strong as ever, and they were actually able to squeeze kill one iron golem. If they were able to kill one, they're able to kill a lot of them. See what I mean? But the cleanup crew slowly took care of this. This made an advantage for the revived version of Aqua and a few other relatives. And at this shopping block, there had been somebody here. But then an abomination had decided to attack the iron golem. That didn't really work out. So then what happened? These higher up piglins, these are like vindicators but from the nether, decided to attack on every single thing they saw, villagers and everything. But these villagers were going to stand their ground, and one day things would change. So now, someone else had to get involved. Although this person was like 103 years old. This person had the power to summon unearthly things from its hands. Bare magic. It was called dark matter, but then something happened that one day. You see, someone who no one even knew had decided to head on over to this village. And this was a mastermind. No monsters hurt him unless he was in survival. He had long rainbow hair and decided to walk around and just spread this bad omen he had everywhere. But this was called a raid omen. It wasn't called a bad omen, but it was called a raid omen. This raid omen, well, it would surprise you soon enough. In a few hours, it was all peaceful. But then, something happened. The horns blared. Everything. It was ready. Ravengers, Hoglins, Piglins, and Vindicators, Pillagers, and Evokers. This was called the Great War. You see, this Great War was like a slavery era. This slavery era ruled over the whole village. The village and the villagers started to die. Protesters started to come over. Just watch. A bunch of protesters came over. This and these protesters were trying to hide. Hide from what, you may ask? Well, what does it look like? The danger that had awaited them. That bell told everyone to head inside and do not come out until the final horn had been blown. This was an important, and this had been an important rule to follow. It wasn't said that whoever doesn't follow it would then die. No, what would happen was there's a good chance they'd all die. But then these little ghosts, these were possessed ghosts of all the villagers who had died. They were made, and they were ordered by the villagers to attack and kill the pillager forces. But then something had happened. A whole line of military has decided to raid this village. They had to find this house. This was the biggest house. 3 evokers had been planning, but not for long. As the door opened, those evokers started pouring out. And as for the piglins, of course, well, these were the local assassinators. But these guys needed to get out somehow. They found the door. Don't worry. They weren't kidnapped. But these villagers had to go, pillagers had to go through a bunch of full abuse. Such as whipping, axing, and just getting beat up to the point where, well, nothing's good anymore. Monsters started to break down doors. And a bunch of the doors had been missing. But some of the villager people had found a nice place to hide. Get out of here. The house had been beat up. It was now a worthless shack. But a lot of the villagers had to get out so then they could face all the execution. But then there had been a retreat. You see, because you see something was bothered by all the noise. And by bothered, I mean bothered. You see, one of the clerics had been conducting an experiment in case of a raid. This had been connected to some kind of core, and if anything had been, and a lot of the noise triggered it all. And you can clearly see in the piglin's face, it's shaking, fearful, and you see everything, and it was all screaming until darkness had occurred. It was nighttime, but then something had happened. The rain got harder. And all the villagers had to escape and find their ways into their homes. This had been overruled by forces of the Illager Empire. Everyone scrambled, pushed, and shoved in order to get into a house. But then something weird happened. A few moments later, there had been, and the deity up in the sky who overruled everything had cursed the village because of their acts. First day, a bunch of spiders and all the iron golems had to be assembled immediately. Once all of those were killed, these blocks, they jumped everywhere, and they filled everything full of goo. And when killed, they would reproduce into even smaller ones. This great war had lasted for days and days and days. Hardly anyone got any sleep. It was then Wednesday. And deity up there had decided to send an army of these things called blazes. They shot fireballs at, everything they saw. Houses, iron golems, monsters, and everything. But then, something happened. There had been a reset. And mysteriously, every creature had a weird heart attack. And the sad thing is that this whole village had been left in ruins. But it wasn't over yet. One evoker, and a few of his bodyguards scrambled to smuggle and find a bunch of loot or useful material. But little did they know, the place had been abandoned for a few years then. They found the cause. It was the cleric's house. They called it Skulk Shrieker. they destroyed it as they found it dangerous. But here's the sad thing. Inside had been a poor and starving family. One son, one mother, and one daughter. The mother had worked from home as a librarian, cut to farmer. But a bunch more of these villagers had decided to take over the village and call it home. But then something had happened. Something truly weird had happened. You see, before the place had been abandoned, someone, probably the cleric, since it worked with all sorts of magic and spells, and had done a lot of things with magic and potion and stuff, had created this device that had the ability to summon lightning from anywhere. Surprisingly, this actually powered the whole entire village. Yep, this powered the whole entire village. So then something had happened. You see, he had lured a creeper in this contraption. It waited, or he waited for the perfect moment. If lightning just striked, and if it just were to strike, then things would be magnificent. And it happened. And the creeper wasn't a creeper anymore. It was a monster of destruction. Poor villager stumbled upon a creeper. But, you know, these creepers exploded anything that came in contact with them. Had some kind of allying. But did you know there was something else that was truly chilling? You see, under the village, under the village, there were, so you remember those tunnels, right? Well, the Illager Empire had been given orders to set a bunch of TNT in those tunnels, had been destroying all the loot. One piece of TNT was all it took to make one hole, but this one hole, you see, something had happened. The hole was much deeper. People had speculated it was just 2 pieces of TNT and that was it. But no, it was way different than that. Something had exploded, and it caused a chain reaction. This leak had been patched due to the physics of the universe that had stated that blocks cannot explode underwater. And unfortunately, a pack of wolves had gone stuck in this hole. But they escaped. They were able to dig out because they were able to bite all the stone off. But something had happened. When this exploded, a chain reaction happened. And something emerged from the cosmos. This was a blind, but a sensitive hearing monster that, if anything, that it hated loud noises. And you see the whole village tried everything. It had been too late. All the houses, everything had been destroyed. This process had been set, and it's villager tradition. To this day, it's still practiced. And it had been when a bunch of TNT was placed all the way up to the sky. Two stacks or something of TNT had been ordered to be put on this stack. This set off a firework, but there was this one TNT. This one TNT had not had exploded in so long. But then, 3,000 years later, it was all done. The war was done. But the village was in ruins. Monsters still roamed. And legend has it that the warden still lays. It just still lays back beneath one block of redstone. But, the villagers made this a sign of hope and tranquility. Someone had interviewed a villager and a survivor of the Great War, and said, when my people had surrendered, they asked villagers to make a sign. But we lied. This sign was not a sign of lost. They forgot to check why we were using redstone blocks instead of regular blocks. They never paid attention to anything we said. That was about to change for the better. The sign had been exploded. This was to symbolize these villagers had still been strong. This symbol, it looks like a spirit screaming, trying to find help.